I'm Tom E. How you doing, my friend?
Great, Christian. How are you? Hey, Fitzy. Hi, Mego.
Hi, Tom. It's been a minute, buddy. Literally like an hour.
I'm Tom E. Great to hear from you. It was great hanging out with you up in Maine, by the way.
It was wonderful, and it was a wonderful event. And the bride was angelic.
Yes.
Oh, thanks,
yes, you were. The
Tom.
groom was too. I thought the groom was rather angelic too.
He was wonderful as well. Let's get to it.
Yes.
All right, let's get into it. Second day, we'll start with what we were just discussing, and that's Matthew Judon. It seemed like there was a communication on the sideline, phones getting handed around, talking with Elliott Wolf, talking with Robert Kraft. That seems like a lot of conversations for someone who isn't getting a new contract. What do you make of that, Tommy?
Yeah, I mean, he could be saying hi to somebody's nephew, though, so I wouldn't jump to any conclusions. As to what we're observing, I'm going to go with what we're being told, and that is that Matthew Judon will play on the contract that he has been given. He's not happy in the least about it. He doesn't want to be traded. He's not the guy who tweeted out the proposed trade. And it's one of the more fascinating contract impasses I've ever seen with the Patriots. I've seen them all since 1997, and this one's interesting in that he's one of the few guys who said, what am I supposed to do? I signed the contract. And he's not bitter as much as he is disappointed. But he's also realistic about it in a way that I think is a little bit refreshing. It's not great to hear him bitch about other people getting paid. Those guys are all on, their second contracts, first time they've had a chance to get a bite at the apple. Matthew's made $66 million in the league so far. So it's harder to have great sympathy and empathy for his plight, but he does have a point. He should be paid more than he is for the 2024 season.
Tom, you mentioned that Matthew yesterday said that he was kind of jealous, like he was happy for his teammates, but he was jealous about the contracts that they were getting. Has ownership and the front office boxed themselves into a corner at all with how many deals that they've given out to both guys who were free agents, but also guys that just were ready for an extension here?
I think if you are an individual not willing to look at the nuance of why those guys got deals, and Matthew Judon and Devon Godshaw, both who are 30 or 31 and have already been on their second contracts and made a crap ton over the last few years, as opposed to Ramondre Stevenson, who was a fourth-round pick, or Mike Onwenu, who was a sixth-round pick, or Kyle Duggar, who was a second-rounder. Same thing with Christian Barmore, a second-rounder. Those guys have a different situation. They're not old, or they are not making multi-millions as Godshaw and Judon were, and there's a lot of difference there. And I think it's interesting because if these players get extensions when they are heading into their walk year, then that really opens up the gate for a lot of guys to have that happen. I mean, look, Tom Brady was pissed about having to go into his walk year, and he had accomplished quite a bit heading into 2019. Guys don't love it, but there's a point at which, as Judon seems to realize, I signed the contract. What else am I going to do? Open a garage?
No, he's at least a man of his word and principle, and I appreciate that about him as well, Tom. And he hasn't taken it out on the fans, as you've seen clearly as well, that he's out there throwing the football with the fans and doing his fan service, sticking around 2 days in a row for autographs. I love to see that. And he had the impromptu session yesterday on the Hill, speaking with yourself and the Callahans and Perrys and everyone else of the world. So he's making all the right moves. He's doing and saying all the right things. You just have to wonder, still with the Patriots having over $40 million in salary cap space now, knowing how important he is to the fan base and on a team that is largely bereft of star power or magnetic people, let alone difference makers on the field, what's the hesitation in not at least just trying to see if you can get a 2-year deal done? Maybe he wants 4 at ridiculous Daniil Hunter money or Bosa money. He's not going to get that. But why not just try to get something done sooner than later, else trade him to a contender so he can play out his days competing for the Super Bowl that's eluded him?
Yeah, well, I would presume, because we don't know what the offers that have gone back and forth are, I would presume that there have been all manner of offers extended to him. And at this point, it is early. It's the second day of camp. A lot of guys used to bang out of camp entirely with holdouts until the ability to hold out was, excised from the CBA, but guys would just hold out because they didn't want to go to camp. So I don't think it's extremely urgent. I think if you give the guy enough to satiate him for 2024, say bring him up to $14 million, which would be an additional $8 million, then you're good. Option for next year. Figure it out. So I'm sure that they've gone through that to some extent. And I made this point about Godshaw when we're talking for our shows tonight. Devon Godshaw's a nose tackle on a 4-13 team. He's 30 years old, and he had a contract renegotiated in 2022 before his second season began. He's going to make $8 million this year. He's made 27 in the past 3 years. He's making $9 million a year to play 58% of the plays or so. It's a 4-13 team. They're not going to be the difference between 5-12 or 9-8. So it just doesn't rise to the level of, oh my God, they have Brandon Ayuk holding out or CeeDee Lamb or someone like that. These guys, they're very low level holdouts, I think, in the general landscape, but there are holdouts. So we're paying attention to.
We're talking with Tom E. Curran. Tommy, with Drake Maye now in charge, it seems like the atmosphere has been reportedly much different, a lot softer, friendlier. What about that has been working or not working so far in these first 2 days?
Don't know yet. You can't tell what's working and not working because it looked like the same results for offensive firepower in 2022 and 2023. We'll have a better grip on how well things are working in the near future. I just think the vibe is different. You know, the vibe of when Bill would be patrolling a practice field or practice session, there were a lot fewer people in the field, just not as many ancillary people on the field in Bill's tenure. When Bill was patrolling, you're like, Ziegler's the greatest coach of all time. He's got to be plotting. He's got to have a plan because Bill's got a plan and he's going to figure something out here and look out. I think we all felt that way, and with good reason for most of his tenure. You know, with Mayo's tenure, it's more of holding your breath. No one knows how it's going to turn out, and there's going to be trial and error involved. The music is the music. I think people will talk about that, but there was plenty of music when Bill was here.
You don't like the music?
It was also a little loud today, too.
It's just there. It's just, now it's just. Are
they going to change the touchdown song, too, by the way?
You were talking metaphorically.
No. There's music. Are they going to change the touchdown song, Tommy?
These are the hard-hitting questions that you pose to me that I just feel like I am caught red-handed with no answer. Sorry, I don't know.
But Tom, maybe the intro song.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Tom, early impressions of Drake Maye. I know your colleague Phil Perry, he's doing like a Drake Maye report card every single day.
Yeah.
What do you think in these very early days of training camp? Is he living up to your expectations? Is it just way too early to make any kind of assessment of him?
Mego, I think the first thing that stands out is that they are going to be true to their word in terms of allowing it to be a competition. When Mayo said that on Tuesday, I was like, yeah, we'll see. We'll see how the reps look. You really want it to be a competition, but you have to get this team ready to participate in games. How many reps are you going to give to a guy who you're not going to start in September? Because that's kind of the indications they've given. They're giving a ton of reps to Drake Maye. Obviously, he's still behind Brissett, but he's getting plenty of run with the starting offensive line, what you would presume to be, and also what you would presume to be the starting wideout. So he's getting a lot of opportunities. And to me, he does not look in the very, very limited and managed reps that he's getting, doesn't look overmatched by any stretch.
I would co-sign and concur with that for sure. And the athleticism, obviously, and the natural raw strength that he has, Tom, us having been conditioned the last 3 years to see somebody have to, get a running start and make a heave-ho sound when they wanted to throw it 55 yards, whereas it was a genteel flick of the wrist yesterday for that sideline pass to Rager. I was also telling him, what a specimen Joe Milton is as well, but we're not going to see him unless there's a Michael Bishop halftime Hail Mary sometime soon. What would you say is your...
I would say this, just to interrupt on that. I do think it's interesting that Milton leapfrogged Zappe on the depth chart. This was the first time we saw Zappe running with the fours, and that to me is an indication, as we've talked in the offseason, well, what happens if Jacoby Brissett has a high ankle sprain? Are the Patriots going to keep Bailey Zappe around because he can play and you know what he's going to do? I think this is an indication that they'll take their chances with Drake Maye. If by injury he's out there, fine. If he wins it, fine. But Bailey Zappi is, despite any acumen that he has in the classroom, not going to be a better option to win football games than Drake Maye would be.
Yeah, and I don't think they're putting him back there just because they don't want him to outshine everybody else. I think at this point they know what Bailey Zappi is, and they're getting more comfortable with Drake Maye. However, I'm not particularly comfortable with everything I'm seeing from the offensive line. Wasn't as comfortable in the offseason as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but would you call that even though we're only 2 days into 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, no padded practices till Monday, would you call that your greatest area of concern?
Yeah, and it has been since, really 2022. I mean, they just haven't been able to play offense because they haven't had the opportunity to create, whether it be running lanes or time for their quarterbacks. Now, last year was because of injury in large part to Strange and Onwenu early, and the fact that they didn't invest in tackles in the offseason, especially right tackle. Now it's, they've invested some, but to be really clear, and I'm sure that you've said this already, Fitzy, to the people who are listening, we only saw about 15 minutes of 11-on-11, no full contact activity.
Mm-hmm.
So the offensive line can't fire out and start manhandling people at this point. I'm not saying it's going to be miles different, but it's too early to say, wow, they suck. You can pretty much put your chips on what will suck early offensive line is a good bet. Mm-hmm. Because they have a lot of improvement to do, and they didn't do it through free agency or really high draft picks. But it's hard to yet say, just like it was. But again, if you want to put your chips on something that we are going to be saying that about, it will be that.
All right, Tommy Curran, you can find him on NBC Sports Boston and here every Thursday at 3:30. Thanks so much, Tommy.
See you guys. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks, Tom.
The great Tommy Curran joining us here on the program.